If you've been around the internet since 2015, you've likely seen a bunch of fan content featuring these two. A majority of you probably know their names, the basic rundown of the show's status quo, which follows the typical Saturday morning cartoon villain of the week formula. After 4 seasons, that still hasn't changed, but if you're a Tumblr user that has ventured deep into the fandom, you'll know that the superhero-y stuff is overshadowed by something far more powerful. Something that can make or break a show. Something that gives life. Shipping. By now, everybody and their hamster knows that this show has spawned a multitude of shipping wars, and honestly, props to the show for reinventing the shipping wheel. I mean, pulling that off it's quite something. But despite the infamous shipping wars within the fandom, which may or may not have caused one or the other to quit watching, Miraculous, Tales of Ladybug and Cat Noir actually has some deep lore and engaging mystery. And if you've read the title of this video, you're already a step ahead. It's time to pull out our magnifying glasses and take a peek at the show's biggest mystery so far. Is Adrien a Sentimonster? But before we start, small disclaimer. At the time of production on this video, Gloob had not announced that it was going to air the episode Emotion out of order, and based on the trailer, we know that the episode is going to feature Felix and his mom Emily, and the Peacock Miraculous. So, you know, all the fun stuff that we were going to cover to bridge the current hiatus. This is unfortunate timing, so please be aware that the contents of this video have been written prior to the airing of the episode. We really wanted to share this video with you, so that's why we decided to still go ahead and share our thoughts. Let us know in the comments if you would like an updated video after Emotion has aired. When it comes to continuity, Miraculous is not exactly a peak example, and as a show whose main target audience is kids, you've probably had moments in front of your screen that make you scratch your head and say, and kids are supposed to understand this? And yeah, we hear you. As an adult with a fully developed frontal cortex, I will admit that I've had to pause many times to comprehend what's just happened. One of the most confusing aspects of the show is what the fandom commonly calls Sentimonsters. And that's fair enough, because there's a lot to this concept that sounds simple on paper, but still has people tripping over known facts that were revealed by the show's creator. So we're gonna start off with a definition of who or what a Sentimonster is. But first, another disclaimer. For the purposes of this video and for clarity, we're going to employ the term senta-being or just senta instead, because etymology, which we'll come back to, plays a big role, and a sentimonster differs greatly from other types of senties. Let's start with the basics first. A senta-being is created through the use of the Peacock Miraculous. The Miraculous works similar to the Butterfly Miraculous, but unlike the Butterfly Miraculous, which is used to give humans or other forms of beings supernatural powers, either in the form of good or evil, the Peacock Miraculous is based on the abstract concept of emotion and is used to create so-called senta-beings that manifest from the amokatized person's emotions. Just like the Akuma, the amok possesses an object belonging to the targeted person and thus establishes a connection between the recipient and the holder. Throughout the series, the only holder of one was shown to be the person wearing the Peacock Miraculous, but this is not a requirement. The amok does not disappear when the miraculous user of the Peacock detransforms. The longevity of a senta-being is connected to their amok, which can be wielded by anyone. Therefore, whoever is in possession of it, and the object it is in, has the power to control a senta-being if they choose to do so. This also includes the senta-being themselves. And there's the next important piece of information. Senta-beings are, as the name says, another form of beings. Due to the evil representation of the Peacock Miraculous's use, it is a common misconception that every senta-being is a senta-monster that acts in accord with their holder's command. Yes, it is possible for the holder of the amok to control a senta-being, but sentis usually have free will and are per definition living beings. The show's creator, Thomas Astruc, has explained it as so in his tweet. If a sentimonster is made to be a human, then it's a human, not something in the shape of a human. To quote another tweet, sentimonsters don't become human, they are human if they're made that way. And this rule, of course, applies to every other type of living being that someone's emotions manifest, and as we know, it is possible to combine the Butterfly and the Peacock Miraculous to akumatize a person and create an amok at the same time. Usually that created senta-being is depicted as an evil being because somebody else is pulling their strings, which makes it easy to forget that they are not evil by nature. They just are. Don't worry, we'll try not to get too philosophical. So now we know how the Peacock Miraculous and the process of amokatization works, but as we said, Those were just the basics to cover the groundwork of our theory. While there have been many clues throughout the series that constitute Adrien as well as his cousin Felix being a Senti, this piece of crucial information burns a serious hole into the widespread theory that the two cousins are Sentis. There can only be one Senti per Miraculous holder, which makes sense because Hawkmoth 2 is only able to create one Akuma at a time, his transformation into Scarlet Moth being the exception. If Emily were to have created a Centibeing, and we know that she did use the Peacock Miraculous at one point, then she could only have created one Amok for one Senti. This pretty much rules out Felix as the likely Centibeing given what we know about the Peacock Miraculous's history, but we'll come back to this later. Another important rule is what Nathalie told Gabriel in the episode Feast. While it is possible for multiple Centibeings, each of whom have been created by a different holder of the Peacock Miraculous, to exist at the same time, the Miraculous user can only control the one that they themselves created. However, the Miraculous user is still able to sense the presence of someone else's Centibeing. Alright, with the foundations covered, it's time to address the elephant in the room. In order to find out the truth, let's take a closer look at the Peacock Miraculous, as its mysterious history is what sparked the theory in the first place. According to Master Fu, he lost the peacock and the butterfly during his escape from the burning temple of the Order of the Guardians that watched over the Miraculous. In addition, he also lost the grimoire, which contains important information about each Miraculous. Through unknown circumstances, the book and the two Miraculous would later be found by Gabriel and his wife Emily with the help of Nathalie. However, the Peacock Miraculous was damaged, and it's still up in the air if the Agreste family's actions led to it or if it was damaged before they found it. What we do know is that Emily used the broken Peacock Miraculous and became sick as a result. Based on the information given in the show so far, she likely used it to create a Centibeing. But why? There's been no official confirmation for it, but the answer might be in plain sight: Emily's portrait. If you've watched our previous 107 Facts video about the show, you will know that the painting is based on a real piece that depicts a woman who is unable to have children. This painting in Gabriel's atelier is definitely no coincidence and tells us that Emily and Gabriel were unable to have children, at least not naturally. So the logical conclusion is that they created a human child with magic. This makes perfect sense as far as the rules of the Senti theory are concerned, but this also begs the question: why did they not choose a safer option via adoption or in vitro fertilization? Going off what we learned in the Shanghai special and in the episode Passion, Gabriel, Emily, and Nathalie were searching for Miraculous before Emily had Adrien. I think that it is likely that they did indeed encounter two missing Miraculous by chance, but the destination was not coincidental. Gabriel, and by extension Emily, must have known about the existence of the Miraculous beforehand. This also means that in retrospect, Emily's death was not the original reason why Gabriel hunts the Miraculous, because he had already been looking for them back when she was still alive. With that addressed, it's time to shift our focus to Adrien and his cousin Felix, who are the likeliest candidates to be Sentis, given what we know about the Agreste's shady history. But the Graham the Vanilli family gives rise to questions just as well. Because the two families are so intertwined, we are going to cover them alongside each other because they are essentially different sides of the same coin. At first glance, Adrien and Felix could be mistaken as twins, and that's by design. Even though Felix is based on a prototype design of Adrien that was altered for the show, his physical appearance and his voice are meant to be a replica of his cousin. Biologically, this is not possible, which indicates that at least one of them was created via unnatural means. The show likes to set up plot points early on, so is it possible that the seeds for Adrien being a Senti were planted as early as season 1? Adrien is a character that was not only described as perfect by the show's creator, but also gets plenty of praise for this trait in the show, usually from Marinette or Gabriel. For Marinette, it makes sense because she views him in a positive light and fell in love with him because of his honest and kind personality, so who wouldn't think that their crush is the most perfect person in the world? In contrast, it seems off to hear Gabriel say this about his own son, as he did in Simon Says when he and Ladybug were looking at Adrien's photoshoot pictures. This scene is later mirrored in the episode Gabriel Agreste, where we have a scene in which Gabriel refers to his own Senti as perfect. When I watched the scene for the first time, my alarm bells went off because it rang too familiar. Was the scene between him and Ladybug just coincidence, or were the writers giving us a hint? After all, there is this. Poor Adrien. A feather allergy is not uncommon though, but it does break the illusion of the perfect boy, doesn't it? Why give a character that is meant to have good traits all around such a minor flaw? And why a feather allergy out of all things? Is this a side effect of Emily having used the peacock Miraculous? If it turns out to be true, then that's a very clever way of introducing Senti Adrien into the show, but it would definitely not be the most convincing evidence. It is difficult, after all, to imagine Adrien, an innocent teenage boy who grew up in isolation from his peers, being a Senti, and many think that such a reveal would ruin the show's representation of child abuse, which Adrien is clearly a victim of. But what about Felix, whose motive is still unknown? Obviously, the resemblance to Adrien is a factor that plays a significant role, and since Adrien was the first to appear in the show, we would think that Felix was based on him rather than the other way around. Unlike Adrien, who is oblivious about his father being a villain and keeping the missing Miraculous locked inside their mansion, Felix suspiciously knows much more than somebody like him should. How come a young boy grown up in London, who's an heir to a rich family, would know about pieces of magical jewelry? If we think back to his first appearance on the show, he was already in pursuit of the Peacock Miraculous, and the writers gave us foreshadowing of the season 4 finale right here.
I'm after a piece of jewelry too. How about we make a little exchange?
Felix did not hold back with revealing his intention of getting the Peacock Miraculous, and immediately suggested to Hawkmoth an exchange deal, which would happen a season later. In the context of the episode Felix, however, you would think that Felix was only after the wedding ring. According to his mother, Emily, he was fascinated with the ring and its history since he was little, but we still don't know the truth about the Graham Davinelli family rings. Add another mystery to the list. It is possible that the ring contains an amok, but whose would it be? It wouldn't make much sense if Gabriel and Emily had the amok meant for Felix because he is not their child, and there can only be one amok per holder. The twin rings are implied to be of importance, or at least the ring that was worn by Emily which Felix was after. While it's unlikely that it contains an amok of Felix, it's possible that these rings are another type of magical jewelry that we haven't been introduced to yet. Since the Shanghai and New York specials, we do know that the Miraculous are not the only pieces of magical jewelry in the Quantic universe, which is the alternate universe that the franchise takes place in. Whatever the power of the rings are, they must be similar to that of the Peacock Miraculous, as is implied when Felix tells Gabriel that he won't be needing it anymore, as he was offering Gabriel another deal in Strike Back. If the ring contained his amok, he would have been less likely to give it up so easily. Could it be Adrien's though? Assuming that it's this ring that contains the amok, that would mean that Felix was in possession of Adrien's amok after he had stolen it from Gabriel, effectively being the one who could have controlled Adrien during the entire time of his absence from Paris until his return in Gabriel Agreste. As the audience, we know that Felix rightly assumed that his uncle is Hawkmoth and in possession of the Peacock Miraculous, so it wouldn't be a stretch if he also knew or assumed that Adrien is a centibeing, which would have been the perfect leverage to use against Gabriel to force him to hand over the Peacock Miraculous in exchange for Adrien's amok. But we saw none of that, so the ring might not be the one containing it. This raises the question, what about the other ring? The one that Gabriel took off Emily's finger after Felix had stolen the one he was wearing? Well, Gabriel said that the ring he was wearing before belonged to Emily, and if memory serves right, we have seen him fiddling only with Emily's ring. Meanwhile, Emily must have been wearing Gabriel's ring on her finger until he took it from her, but if Emily was the holder of Adrien's amok, then she would have likely chosen her own ring as the amokatized object rather than Gabriel's. And here we come full circle, with everything that we've mentioned so far concerning the ring exchange between Felix and Gabriel. It is unlikely that either of these rings contain an amok. Does this rule out both boys as centibeings? Well, let's go further. We cannot ignore this scene after all.
And now you know that I only need to snap my fingers to make you disappear from here. You wouldn't dare. Do you want to take that risk, Felix?
It's very rare that we see Felix in distress, and it's telling that his frightened state is a result of Senti Gabriel snapping his fingers, where we can see one of the rings in perfect view. We later get a similar moment in Risk, where Felix disobeys Gabriel, but does what Nathalie asks of him, which is when we get another clear view of the ring on her hand. How can these two scenes be explained if we were going to assume that the twin ring is not the object with the amok? Well, as for the first scene, it is understandable that a young boy, even someone like Felix, would get scared of being cornered by an adult man much taller and more intimidating than himself. It's a natural reaction for Felix to get scared, and the finger snapping could have been a red herring by the writers. The same goes for the other examples, and here it makes even more sense that Felix was not introduced by Nathalie's ring, but rather acting based on what Adrien would have done in this situation. One must not forget that moments before, he had seen the dead or comatose body of his aunt in his uncle's creepy basement, so his natural reaction would be to get out of harm's way ASAP. His defiance towards Gabriel might just as well have come from his own disdain towards him rather than from trying to keep the promise he had made to Adrien. But what most likely disqualifies Felix as a sentibeing is that the Peacock Miraculous has been in possession of the Agrests for over 15 years, and before Nathalie, only Emily used the Peacock. Keep in mind that Thomas Astruc said that there could only be one Senti and one Amok per holder. If Emily had wanted to create another human child, then she would have had to dispel the existing Senti, and it's highly unlikely that she would have done that given what we know about her. But what we can say is that Felix's interest in the Peacock Miraculous coupled with his sympathy towards the fallen Sentimonsters suggests that he and his family must have a connection with the Miraculous or with magical jewels in general. With the family twin rings possibly being magical, it would explain how Gabriel learned about the existence of the Miraculous. Emily and her sister likely knew about the ring's magical powers, and she might have told Gabriel about it, and somehow they learned about the existence of the Miraculous, which inspired them to search for them as we saw in Passion. Bear in mind, this theory is based on what we know so far. There are still important puzzle pieces missing, as we don't know what exactly compelled Gabriel to track them down in the first place, and how the Peacock Miraculous got damaged. Who knows? Maybe an earlier generation of the Graham de Vanillis had used and damaged the Miraculous before they chose to get rid of it, and Gabriel and Emily wanted to recover it, without knowing that they were more miraculous until they had found the grimoire. But that's a topic for another video. If you'd like us to explore this idea, let us know in the comments. With Felix seemingly not an option anymore, that leaves Adrien, but apart from a portrait, an allergy, and a mysterious family past, what other pieces of supporting evidence are there? Unlike Felix, Adrien has more moments in the show that can be reason for suspicion. The most important aspect being Emily's ring, but we kinda ruled that out. Even though we assumed that Felix likely knew of the ring's power, what if he actually didn't know and wanted it for other reasons? If the ring really does contain Adrien's Amok, which is still a possibility with what we know, then it would provide an explanation as to why Adrien is sometimes seen giving in to Gabriel's demands, whenever his father happens to be fiddling with the ring. The most obvious examples being the episodes Mega Leech and Ephemeral. With the latter, we're specifically talking about the moment of Adrien's akumatization. Yeah, there is a moment earlier on in the episode in the car where we also see the ring in use, but this scene is more interesting to analyze. That's because we see Adrien struggling and attempting to disobey Shadowmoth, but as soon as we see Gabriel fiddling with the ring, Adrien relents. In my opinion, the shift in tone and attitude is more suspicious than the prior mentioned scene between Felix and Nathalie, at least when we compare it to his akumatization as Cat Blanc, where the transition of his struggling to his surrender was more natural, but herein lies another problem. Gabriel did not use the ring that time, even though the events of Cat Blanc took place before Felix took his ring from him. You could argue that Gabriel wanted to hide the ring from Ladybug, or that he got more ruthless as time went on and became less considerate of Adrien's feelings and his son's autonomy. There's also the fact that Adrien seemingly didn't have a childhood dream other than to do whatever his parents wanted of him, which is very disturbing. But that doesn't necessarily mean that he's a sentibeing, because his parents likely conditioned him to be that way. It is possible to grow up as a naturally created human and do whatever your parents tell you to do, and we know that Adrien had a positive relationship with at least one parent. We've also seen him be cataclysmed by a Miraculous, and according to opposing theorists, he would have gone berserk like the other Sentis if he was one himself. That might not exactly be true. At the start of our video, we told you that Sentis are whatever they are created as. If a holder decides to create a human with the Peacock's magic, then they are human. The only difference being that they're human by magical nature rather than biological nature. If we follow this line of thought, Adrien has the same traits that any other human has. Because he was created to be human, it means that he wouldn't have the same reaction to a cataclysm as a Sentimonster does, because Sentimonsters are not human. An ordinary human wearing a superhero suit with magical properties that makes the wearer nearly invincible would be in moderate pain but still survive, which is what we saw happen to Adrien in Miraculous. It stands to reason that even if Adrien had not been in his transformed state, the cataclysm would have had the same kind of effect on him as it would any other human, regardless if he was transformed as Cat Noir or not. So what's the verdict? After Emily and Gabriel got together, they found out that they couldn't have children, and at one point in their relationship, Gabriel learned about the Miraculous. After finding the two lost Miraculous and the Grimoire, they had Adrien. Depending on whether you believe that Felix was born first or Adrien came first, them looking alike might be pure coincidence. If Felix is the older one, Emily might have based Adrien on him, with the distinction of giving Adrien her own eye color, whereas Felix's eyes resemble his mother's. If Adrien was born first, it was just an unlucky coincidence. The object containing Adrien's amok was originally worn by Emily, but after she passed away, Gabriel switched their rings and tried to take care of Adrien with the help of Nathalie rather than relying on the amok. Because there have been no other highlighted objects that could come into question as an amok other than Emily's ring, we're going to assume that it indeed contains the amok. We don't know the full extent of Adrien's childhood, but if we are to believe that Emily was a good mother, she probably only wore the ring, but never actively used it to control Adrien. The Graham Divinity twin rings likely have an unknown set of magical jewelry, and the knowledge about their exact abilities might have been forgotten throughout the generations, until Emily told Felix about the ring's legend. Knowing that there were magical jewels in existence and having lost his father, Felix could have tried to use the Peacock Miraculous in a similar way to the Catbug and Black Cat Miraculous, by creating a new father rather than trying to bring the old one back. This last one is probably the weakest part of our theory, but to be fair, we have yet to learn about Felix's motivations with the Miraculous, and it looks like emotion is going to give us more answers. With that being said, we are very excited for what's to come in the future of Miraculous, and we want to hear your thoughts. What do you think about the Senti theory? Do you think Adrien is one? What about Felix? Do you have any other theories you want us to cover? Let us know in the comments, and be sure to click the like button and subscribe. Remember, Frederator loves you.